right, as we start back up, I just want to mention to you that, again, Chapter 5 tomorrow, Chapter 6 on Friday. Then next week, the plan is we're going to start going over a couple PDFs, and we're going to go back into the book. But these two PDFs I just sent you right now, you may have had them already, I don't remember. But I sent them to you in both PDF format and in Word format, because some of you say you have a hard time copying out of one format or the other, so hopefully that'll help. All right, so you just got sent a folder, zipped folder, that's called DBF and CF, which stands for Database First and Code First. You've got the same article in there, again, in both PDF format and in Word format. Each one is about 30 pages. So we're going to do the same project, and we're going to do it both Code First and we're going to do it Database First, so you can see the difference. All right, then we'll jump back into the book. And my plan is when we go back into the book, all right, this is my hope at least, we're going to start working on a different project as well. And I like to just be working in the book like maybe like Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, or at the most Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Then this other project that we'll work on that for the rest of the time. All right, so you can basically count on, within a few weeks at least, hopefully, either Thursday and Friday, or at least Friday, as being lab days. All right, okay. Now I'm going to ask you a question. You might think it's a trick. It's not at all meant to be a trick. All right. When we use SQL and we use a where statement, why are we using a where? Somebody tell me. Somebody's got to know this. Why do we use a where statement in SQL? So if I say select star from employees where department name equal accounting, what am I doing? Right, but the answer is right on the screen here. I'm filtering. All right, so in other words, in the example that we went through before, where we just added these products, what if we only wanted to add products that were $50 or more, or $50 or less, something like that? Then we'd start to be doing filtering. So the author says, the last thing I want to show you about extension methods is that they can be used to filter collections of objects. So we're going into the my extension method in here, and we're going to add these. All right, but we'll be able to do it based on a category. Now, why is that important? When we do the sports store, project that will start up soon, we'll have 3 categories. All right. One is called chess, although I don't know what chess actually makes that you'd put that into a sports store, but they do. So there's chess, there is like water sports or something like that, and there's soccer. So we're working with categories. I think the reason the author is showing this here is he's starting to introduce the fact that when you filter, all right, you can filter to make category searches easier. Think about this. All right, let's just suppose I go into a company, and let's say literally the company has millions of people working there, millions. And we come in and we say, I've got an urgent message here. And you say, for who? If you say, I don't know, it might take a long time to find the right person. All right? But if they say, well, all I know is the person's last name is Scott. Well, now you can filter through your employee list for a last name equal to Scott, and it's probably going to cut it down quite a bit. And if you also have a first name, that'll cut it down even more. All right? That's the kind of thing they're looking at in here. So I'm going to grab this, put this into the my extension methods. All right. So again, we want to be able to do what we did before, but We want to be able to do it based on category, for lack of better words. Now, there's some new stuff in here. All right, it says this extension method is called filter by category. All right, right there, filter by category. It takes an additional parameter that allows me to inject a filter, which is what this basically is, the category parameter. All right, those product objects whose category property matches the parameter are returned, and that those that do not match are discarded. Again, it's very similar in context to us doing a where clause. All right. So in the home controller, they want us then to come in and at the bottom to add this. And again, this works just fine, because if you do look up here, what you notice is that every time we're putting in a new product, we're also giving it a category. So he's not changing anything per se. All right. And again, he's coming back in there. He's going through there, and he's grabbing the ones he wants. All right, and just those. Just those, in this case, where the category is equal to soccer. Well, what does that mean? Well, category is soccer, category is soccer. 1950 and 34.95. If I'm doing my math right, it looks like 54.45. All right, if I did the math right. So if we save this and run it, that's what we should get. Let's try that and then go back and take a look at what's there. All right, doesn't like something, so, oh, I don't have a slash after home. That probably would help. Still not in there. Home. Bless you. It's interesting. You know how important to this institution work ethic is. What you may or may not know, it does not affect any of you in here, but new students starting this semester have to take an additional class called work ethic. And they asked for volunteer instructors to take the class. All right? And they have it's 8 weeks. So they had an 8-week class at the beginning of the semester and then an 8-week class at the for the last 8 weeks. So I volunteered for the last 8 weeks. So of course they gave it to me the first 8 weeks. All right. Well, the reason I'm telling you that is this isn't working for whatever reason. We'll see if we can fix it. But the point is, what I'm supposed to do is I'm supposed to say, no, this is an opportunity. All right. And that's kind of the way they want you guys to be too. But I'll tell you, the book is just, there's a small book that we're using for the class. It's very common sense. But the stuff that Guy says in there does make sense. You know, things like, hey, if you're working 8 to 5, it doesn't hurt to get there at 5 or 10 minutes to 8. It may hurt you to get there at 5 or 10 minutes after 8. It's all stuff like that. All right? So let's see if we can figure out what the problem here is. All right. So the author says, when I call the filter by category method on the shopping cart, okay, whose products are soccer, I think that's the problem. It says if you start the project and target the use action method, you should see the following result. Well, I thought I did it that way, so let's see. See if we do it this way, what happens. If I get an error, I don't get an error. Oh, doesn't like that either. Oh, there's a period in there. No, it still doesn't like it. Well, what's supposed to happen is it's supposed to go through here and check my list and say, categories water sports, skip it. Categories water sports, skip it. Category is soccer, add that $19.50 to my total. Category is soccer, add $34.95 to the total. Now, when I looked at it, it looked as though, unless I missed something, and I don't think I did, but it looked as though, this is what you call it, on the shopping cart. All right, only those products are returned. If you start the project and target the use filter extension, you'll see the following result, which is the sum of the soccer. Well, for whatever reason, I didn't. All right. All right, so that should have come up with, putting that in there, it should have come up with whatever we said, 54.50 or whatever it is, 54.45, I guess. All right, I'll look at it, see if I can figure out what the problem is during the next break. Okay, next thing to discuss here on page 80 are Lambda expressions. Most every programming language of any consequence, so to speak, supports Lambda expressions. All right, C# does, VB.NET does, Java does, JavaScript does. All right, we may never have used them in the AWD111 class, but they're there. All right, so the idea is what you can do by using Lambda expressions is you can make it easier to write what are referred to as delegates. And what's a delegate? Well, when you think about it, if I said, I've got to leave for 15 minutes, Luke's in charge. In a way, then, what am I doing? I'm delegating the authority for watching the class to him. And when you create a delegate in here, it's the same kind of an idea. You can create a method that basically will call another method to do some work for you, type of thing. All right? So, the author talks in here about using a delegate method. So if I come back in here, I don't believe that line is in there right now in the myExtensionMethods.cs file. All right, totally grayed out right now because it's not being used. And what does it tell us in here? Well, let's look at it. All right. Again, when you look at the stuff that's in here, it's like when I went through it the first time, it was one of those, it kind of made my head spin. Because there's a lot of stuff in here we've never had before. All right. So the author says we're taking a product parameter and we're returning a Boolean, which will be true if the product should be included in the results. All right. So in other words, now I can grab this and I can, I can add this into here. All right, down at the bottom. Okay. And the author says, let's look at the changes made to the use filter extension method. All right, and they're right there. And you look at that, again, this is something before this I had never come across. All right, maybe Evan has, maybe Paul has, I don't know. But notice what it says there. It's a func, F-U-N-C. All right, so we go back, and the author says, I used a func as the filtering parameter, which means I do not need to define a delegate as the type. All right, so again, why are they doing that? They're doing it so they have less code to write. The author, again, is showing you different ways of doing the same thing. And he tries doing this and not saying, well, you should use this way because it's best. No, he's just showing you a bunch of ways that it can be done, period. For each. Now, as you go through and you take a look at this, it looks like it's like, fine, what are we getting out of this? Well, when you look, he's replaced a lot of the work he did earlier with a single line of code. All right? And bottom line is, there's two reasons for sitting there and after you get something working to start tweaking with it. All right? One is if it results in less code. Because if it results in less code, and if you tell me if my job is to go and maintain code, and I've got my choice, I can maintain 50 lines of code, it might be a little more complex, or I can maintain 500 lines of code that may be a little easier rather, I'll take 50. Typically too, when you have less code, it gives you the other advantage in that it improves performance. All right, so that's the idea, is this is what we're getting out of this. Right? Oops. So the idea is, hopefully at least, you're able to come in here and just put in a line of code. All right, and that line of code is going to end up running hopefully just as well, and you get the same results. Now, I got an error when I ran it before, so I'm probably going to get the same error. Right. What I'll do is I'll go back. I think I've got a working version of this. Okay, I'll look for it and I'll print it out. I'll look for it during the next break. Right. What the author is getting to, though, here is this. Look at this line of code, if you would. These couple lines of code. This, again, is a lambda expression. All right? So I'm saying for each product that I'm referring to as prod, grab the individual product. All right? Check to see if that product's category is soccer. If that product's category is soccer, add it to the total. That should make sense. At least logically, it should make sense. When you start writing some of these expressions, some of these lambda expressions, this is what we're going to be getting to and getting toward. There's typically two ways. Once you start going in and manipulating a database, you can write these expressions. One is to use lambda expressions like this. The other one is to use link queries, which is the last thing that's discussed in this chapter. All right. Paul and I have had discussions about these. He likes the lambda expression because he says that it executes faster. He's probably right. I like the link query because it's more like SQL, which we already know. All right. But you typically can write expressions in either way. Now notice what they've done here then, is they're going through this, another lambda expression. You should be able to look at this and figure out what it is. We want either soccer products or we want products that are greater than $20. All right, so it's going to go in and it's actually going to be checking two different fields in the query. It's got to check the category field and it has to check the price field. All right. If either or both of those are true, it's going to add it and total it up. So we get a different amount, all right, by doing that. All right. So the author says, I don't need to express the logic of my delegate in a lambda expression. I could have done it by calling a method. Again, there's more than one way of doing the same thing. And he talks about that in here. All right. All right. Automatic type inference. This is something fairly new in C#. It says in here, C# can use a var keyword to define a local variable without specifying its type. Okay? That's pretty cool because C# is what's referred to as a strongly typed language. This is a fairly new concept. Think about when we used var in JavaScript. You said var and you gave it a variable name. And in JavaScript, what happened was you could basically put any kind of variable in there. This is similar. So notice, all right, I believe once you have you put a value in there, unlike Java, you can't change the type after you've done it. All right. It says it's not that my variable does not have a type, it's just that I'm asking the compiler to infer it from the code. Okay? Inference means you are giving up some control. You're saying, hey, compiler, you go and figure it out. All right? And it may not sound like a big thing, but one thing I want to mention to you is that next semester, my hope is at least, that we'll learn Android, and we'll learn Android Java, but then partway into the semester we'll start talking about Kotlin. Kotlin is the language that Google recommends that all new Android development be done in. Kotlin uses var all over the place. It says to the compiler, okay, I'm creating this right now. We don't know what kind of variable my variable is going to hold. All right. So once we do this, you figure it out. That's what we're doing. Is we're telling the system, you figure it out. All right. That's the inference part. All right. Anonymous types. By combining object initializers and type inference, I can create simple data storage objects without needing to define the corresponding class or structure. Again, pretty strong stuff. All right. And actually, and I don't know, Grace, I don't know if Evan did this. Did he talk about structures in the C# class? Okay. Because this is almost like a structure. And a structure, in very many ways, is like a record. All right. A structure can hold a bunch of fields. It doesn't have methods in it, all right, like a class does. But, for instance, I could create a structure that was called address that would hold your street address, your city, your state, your zip code, etc. All right, that's almost what you're able to do with this. So he kind of changes here, calls this create a non-array. So what does he have here? Well, it is an array, yet it's not an array. It is an array as far as I'm concerned because it has the brackets. But notice what it has. A name and a category. So he's creating an array that acts more like a dictionary. All right. All right. Last thing that's discussed in this chapter is LINQ. LINQ is an acronym. It stands for Language Integrated Query. All right. And you've already seen some of this stuff. There we go. It looks a little funny, all right, if you know any SQL, because you're used to select something from something, then probably maybe a where and then an order by. You start the LINQ query with from match in products, order by the price in descending order. Select new match.name. You're doing the same thing. The difference is, and I've mentioned this before, you can run this on non-databases. SQL is designed to work with database tables. LINQ can run with database tables or with anything that holds data, all right, such as an array of products. And that's what they're doing right here. You couldn't take this and then write an SQL statement that did what this LINQ statement does. It wouldn't be possible. So again, what you get from LINQ is the ability to treat non-database objects as though they were databases. And he's got several examples in here. Take 3, which is kind of like limit. In other words, just give me 3, the top 3. And notice this, because we're going to be working with LINQ. It's got a lot of different methods that you can use. You just want to concentrate quickly on a couple of them. Notice first or default. That says go through a list of objects. If you find something that meets my criteria, just give me the first one. If you don't find anything that meets my criteria, give me back a default. Quite often with a string, it would, like if I had a list of names, give me the first person with a last name of Scott. If you don't find any, the default might be no record found. All right. That one's used a lot. The other one that's used quite a bit is single or default. Return just the first item. All right. or the default if there are none. It's very similar to the first or default. You're going to see these because we're going to be using them. All right. Last thing that's in here, and again, it's on your next written test, is deferred link queries. The difference between a link query and a deferred link query is when it runs. One of the things that C# uses when it can is something that's called lazy loading. What that means is it doesn't want to run the query until you need the results. Did you hear what I said? It doesn't run the query till you need the results. You might say, well, big deal. That means that you can run the query as late as possible. So if you're running it on data that's constantly changing, all right, you can run it right when you need it in the program and get the newest, most up-to-date information possible. All right. All right, I guess I lied. There's one more thing that's discussed in here, and that is async and await, which I think are both in here, but we'll find out right now. All right. The author says, one big addition to C# is improvements the way that asynchronous methods are dealt with. Asynchronous methods go off and do work in the background. All right. So in other words, they allow for typically what's referred to in programming languages is to allow your language to be multi-threaded. With some languages, if, for example, if I ask for some data, let's say I'm querying a database that literally has billions with a B of records, and I want to find 2 or 3 records that match my criteria. It could conceivably take a few seconds to a few minutes to get my data back. All right? With async, you're able to tell the system, work on that in the background and go and do something else. All right? So it says C# and .NET have excellent support for asynchronous methods, but the code can be verbose, and developers who are not used to using it, all right, might find that it's got a very unusual syntax. When you look at it there, it does look a little weird. All right. So it says Microsoft introduced 2 keywords to C# that are specifically intended to simplify using asynchronous methods like this. They are async and await. All right. Async to make sure that you are able to do things in an asynchronous type of methods, and await to tell them basically to wait or how long you want to wait. So the author explains that in here, and mercifully, that's it. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take a look from my copy of this, and then so we're going to take another break, and let's take a break till 2:35. I'm going to see if I can find my copy, and if I can, I'll run off hard copies, but I want to run it for you to show you the stuff with everything working, because I know I did it before and it worked just fine. So in case you hadn't figured it out, this is my working copy. All right, and probably, I don't know, but where I lost control back a ways was I was trying to go too fast and shouldn't have. You should be able to, there are just 2 files here that you should have to make changes to. They are the home controller.cs file and the myExtensionMethods.cs file. And if you make the changes to both of those so that basically it looks like this, it should work. Now you're going to have to end up commenting out some of the stuff in there, and I think that's where I blew it, for lack of better words, when I was going through the example with you, because there was some stuff I should have commented out and didn't. So in my desire to get through this as good as possible and as fast as possible, I went too fast. All right, it may not have seemed like it at the time, or it might have. I don't know. So what I'm telling you is your shopping cart should already look like this, as far as I know. You don't have to make any changes to it. Your product.cs file, yours. I didn't give you this. You should already have these. Your result shouldn't change. The only things that I looked at in here that should change are the home controller, and you can see there's quite a bit of code in there, but you've got most of that code. All right, you may have to come in, like I said, and comment some stuff out or whatever. All right, but the rest of this, it should work, and I even put some comments in there. All right, and the my extension or my extension methods.cs, and that you probably have most, if not all of it. So it's really more the home controller. So I'd like to try to have you at least get used to typing some of this stuff in. Why? Because later when we go in and we're putting in Lambda expressions and we're putting in some link queries, at least you'll have seen them. Maybe not in a lot of depth and breadth of coverage, but at least you will have seen them. All right. So I also emailed this to everybody. This is, again, the Chapter 4 written test. What are setters and getters? We talked about that already. Again, just a sentence or two on each. That's fine. What is an automatically implemented property, also known as an automatic property? We talked about those. What is an object initializer? Talked about that. Same thing with what are extension methods. What is an IEnumerable? And again, like I did before, I both gave you, since you've got an electronic copy of this, I put some more URLs out there so you've got those. All right. What is a lambda expression? Give an example. What is type inference? What is an anonymous type? What is a link query? And give an example. And then explain what the difference is between a link query and a deferred link query. All right. And what are the C# await and async keywords and how are they used? And again, I've got in here property examples, auto increment, etc. So there's stuff in here for all of this. All right. So you've got what, an hour and a half that you can get started on it now, or work on one of the other ones. All right. My goal was that by early next week we're basically done with chapters 1 through 6 in the book. All right, then we can jump in and go through a code first example and a database first example, then go back into the book and actually start going through chapters 7 through 12, taking somewhere around a week with each chapter. All right, and we'll take it from there.